Hey, Hawkeye fans, emergency podcast here. Chad Leistikow of the Des Moines Register, Tyler Tachman of the Des Moines Register. Obviously, some big news this morning, Tyler. I wouldn't say it's like seismic, season-changing news, but it's big. It's important to discuss that for the first time since the Hayden Fry era, Kirk Ferentz will not be on the sidelines for a Hawkeye game, suspended for the August 31st opener against Illinois State, as well as wide receivers coach Jon Budmayr, who, for an early contact recruiting violation with Cade McNamara. That is what our reporting has led to, also consistent with what Scott Dochterman first publicly reported at The Athletic. So credit to him on that. But that is what's happening, Tyler. What is your reaction? I know it hit while I was asleep. Um, woke up to it a little bit this morning, but had everything almost ready to go. I just, didn't have the 100%. I wasn't confident enough to put it out there. Scott did a great job getting it out there, but we now know, and now we have something to discuss with Kirk here at 1:30, who happens to have a press conference today.
Yeah, yeah. Well, good morning to everyone else. Hope the day's starting off well. But yeah, I texted you I think a little after 11 with it,
Yeah.
and then got around 6 a.m. was probably what you were waking up to. But
Yeah, my alarm went off at 6. Yeah.
okay, there you go.
Yeah.
Anyways, but so if your alarm didn't wake you up, then my text probably did. So, um, no, I mean I think the kind of initial obvious reaction is that at this point, as we speak at Thursday morning, we don't know whether this is self-imposed by Iowa, the suspension or not. But it's just a reflection of like just the playing field isn't even in college sports. Like the NCAA is supposed to make an even playing field, and all this whatever you want to talk about, all the jargon behind it, but that the playing field isn't really even because there's programs doing things a billion times worse, almost everything under the sun, especially when it comes into recruiting in the landscape with NIL, the transfer portal. I mean, there's just so much going on that behind closed doors and that's swept under the rug. It just, to me, it's a pretty clear indication that, yeah, maybe Iowa did do something a little bit against the rule book, but the NCAA is supposed to be creating an even playing field, and they're almost kind of doing the opposite.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to talk about on this podcast, and it's not going to be a long one because I got to get to Iowa City. And my kids are coming with me. Like, well, hey, fun family trip today. So yeah, they'll be, joining the stress on the drive. But anyway, we're going to talk about what we do know, and we can't know exactly at this point the precise communication that occurred between Ferentz, Budmayr, Cade McNamara. What I had heard, and I would say that heard it more, longer ago than you would think, that there could be something to this. And what I had heard was that it came from a podcast. I listened back to the McNamara podcast yesterday with the Palmer brothers, or the Palmers. What? It was the first one he did. Remember that?
Jordan
Yeah,
Palmer, was it?
Jordan
Yeah.
Palmer. Yeah, and someone else. And it wasn't Carson Palmer, Jordan Palmer. And then he did one last year with the Vandenbergs, right ahead of the Big Ten championship game. And in the Palmer podcast, he mentioned something about when you talking about the portal process, and like a lot of it has to do with connections you already have. And one of those connections was Jon Budmayr. He didn't mention him by name. He's like the guy that used to be at Wisconsin. He gave me my first Power 5 offer or something like that. And so that was mentioned, but it wasn't like he did it before I was in the portal. He didn't say anything like that. And then in the Vandenberg podcast, he said something to the effect of, I went in the portal after the Ohio State game, but I already kind of knew where I was going. And so who knows if those just kind of raised some red flags. They looked into it. We don't know that, but I'm just saying it had to do with an early contact. Obviously, Budmayr involved because he's suspended for the opener as well. And it's just sort of I don't know. I don't want to say it's bad luck that Iowa's gotten kind of nabbed here, with gambling and then Caden Proctor with the Tyler Barnes text/tweet, and now this. I mean, I do not believe that it is like a nefariously run program more so than any other program or anything like that. But it just seems like a little bit of, if you get, they did break the rules. Seems like, I mean, they wouldn't be suspended if they didn't. So you still have to follow the rules. And it just seems like Iowa's just sort of gotten caught on some minor stuff here, as seems like pretty minor stuff. But again, we don't know the full story. Just kind of articulating that. But that's kind of where we are. Made a violation. Ferentz is out the first game.
And I mean, let's be real that he's going to miss the Illinois State game. Like, if you're going to pick a game on the schedule that Kirk Ferentz has to miss, that's not a bad one to do. But it does feel like, even though the severity might not be that bad, like the noise around it just creates more kind of noise, right? It's a little bit more drama. This isn't just like a very smooth lead up to the season now. But I will say this, it's hard to think about many teams that are more equipped to deal with a situation like this than Iowa. Thinking back to what they went through last season, the gambling investigation, all the injuries, the controversy against Minnesota, the whole Brian Ferentz situation. They went through so much of that. There was external noise. There were so many reasons for them to get off course, and they still end up winning the Big Ten West, getting to the Big Ten championship. And then so many of those guys returned. So many of those guys came back. When you talk about Jay Higgins and Nick Jackson, the leadership on this team is so good. And if they're able to respond in the way this season in the way that they did last season, it's hard to think that this is not going to be anything more than just a little bump in the road, when we look back at it.
Brett Decker on Twitter replying to my article in Hawk Central that went up in the, 6:45 range. I can't remember what time it posted. But yeah, independently, 3 sources I did confirm everything with. Good to go on this story. But he says this. He says this whole Kirk suspension is like getting a speeding ticket for going 56 and 55 because the NCAA can't catch the speeders going 110. Just an example of kind of the prevailing thought out there. Dargan is going to feed us some other chats in our YouTube section. I'm not monitoring those now, but Dargan's going to send us some good ones. So if you have comments on this, feel free. You might get read. Dargan says, someone asked if Kirk Ferentz and Caleb Brown will watch the game together. I would love to watch the game with Kirk. I'm sure you could survive the press box, but that would be a good story idea. I'm sure he wouldn't let me, but that would be pretty funny, actually. It'd be actually hilarious. Like, is he writing down the penalties, on his leg? Is he like yelling? Is he? I don't know. It's we're gonna find out more like what the game week will entail. But usually these suspensions you just can't be there on game day. So Seth Wallace, hey, fortuitous timing, right? Kirk Ferentz names an assistant head coach. I assume he knew some of this was brewing when that happened. I don't think he was like doing that for this exact situation, but it does create some clarity who will run the team on August 31st. And Seth Wallace, will be that guy, unless Kirk says something differently. But I think that's comforting to know as well as kind of more details come out. Do you have a plan? It's not like you're throwing something together here a week before the opener. Because as I understand it, Tyler, the players had no idea about this until 11 p.m. last night. So this is not something that was simmering among the whole football program for a while. This was pretty tightly kept in the Ferentz circle.
And there's so much value just in terms of the coaching staff and like the experience they have with Kirk Ferentz. Like LeVar Woods has been on the coaching staff for a while. Seth Wallace has been on the coaching staff for a while. Phil Parker. Like, you feel good just because if Kirk Ferentz can't be there, you feel good about everyone else that can. And even someone like Tim Lester, in his first season in the program, this will be his very first game at Iowa, he has head coaching experience. So there's just, I feel like the experience on the staff, the stability, the fact that like even someone like Tim Lester has been in that head coaching seat. Like you just, it doesn't feel like because Kirk Ferentz isn't there, like everything just falls off of a cliff. You feel like you have a lot of guys that are going to be able to handle the situations that may come up in game one. And yeah, I mean, Seth Wallace being a guy that kind of got that promotion this offseason. So yeah, I mean, the way the staff is made up, you don't feel like this is a major issue.
Some questions that we need to resolve, Tyler, today. Let's talk about some of those. One that a lot of people have already had is, will the game count on Kirk Ferentz's record? My understanding is, and this is not confirmed. I've asked the university. They said they don't have an answer for me yet. But my understanding is that's up to the institution where to assign those wins. So does that go to Kirk Ferentz? Does it go to Seth Wallace? I would think it would go to Kirk Ferentz, win or lose. Obviously, you could lose against Illinois State, but I would suspect that they would count as wins. I believe that Jim Harbaugh was credited with wins last year when he was not coaching for Michigan. Again, I think it's up to the institution. Maybe the NCAA counts it differently. That's a question we have to answer. Another question that needs answering is, will Iowa have to vacate any wins that Cade McNamara played in? I was told that no, that's not the case. He played in 5 games last year. I kind of jokingly asked the person, can they vacate the 31-0 loss to Penn State as well? But again, a minor violation here. And I think the ironic thing is that if it was like Cade was tearing it up, it'd be like, oh, big whoop, 1 game suspension. We got a great quarterback for 2 years, but we don't know, we don't know if it's worth it, at this point, because Cade's battling back from injuries. So what other, any thoughts on those things, Tyler? And what, are there other questions in your mind that we need to get resolved here this afternoon and in the coming days?
Maybe if Iowa wins, Kirk will get the win. If Iowa loses, he'll let Seth Wallace take that one on his resume.
That'd be a tough start for
Yeah,
Seth Wallace.
yeah. I don't know about. No, I'm joking, but no, I mean, I'm just curious to kind of learn, like, how open Kirk is going to be about this whole situation. Like, is he going to be willing to kind of share details of what happened? Is it just going to be him talking about the suspension and not wanting to really get into the specifics of it? But something else, I mean, we weren't anticipating until yesterday hearing from Kirk this week is you talk about Cade McNamara. Like, is Iowa going to name a starting quarterback? Because that's, I mean, before
secondary news today. Yeah.
Before this whole ordeal came up, that was kind of the headliner, and now that's kind of taking a little bit of a back seat. But is Iowa going to name a starting quarterback? Is Cade McNamara going to be confirmed to be the starter? So that's interesting. And just with fall camp wrapping up, like, was there anything else notable that Kirk can say about the actual team on the field and what has been happening, and what he anticipates stuff to be happening on game day when he isn't there?
Couple questions from the chat. Is Kirk banned from the stadium on game day? I believe that is the case. Yes. Is it an Iowa or NCAA imposed suspension? No clarity on that yet. My guess is, based on past precedent, that this is a negotiated, self-imposed penalty, and my understanding at this point is that it's not completely resolved yet. So to your point, Tyler, Ferentz probably will not be super forthcoming with details today because it's an ongoing investigation. Would be my guess. Now, Kirk is 69 years old. He's been willing to speak his mind, but I don't think he's going to try to rile up the NCAA much more. I mean, he kind of went after him a little bit in the gambling last year, as we all recall. The Proctor stuff hasn't really addressed much. I think he just kind of wanted to move on from that. So those were another. And then, is this the end of the penalties? That was another question. Another one is, could anything come from the Proctor issue? This was from late 2022, right? The Proctor thing is from spring of 2024. So that's how long this thing took from the McNamara thing. So maybe they're, if we get to talk to Beth Getz. Certainly would like an update on the Proctor thing, if there's going to be a slap on the wrist for the program. They reported it as a level 3 violation, so very minor violation. So is this the end of the penalties? I think it is. I would be surprised if there's additional penalties, because it does not seem like it is a major violation. But, if it was an outside a recruiting contact period, that's what Jim Harbaugh got in trouble for last year, and he got 3 games for Michigan. Now, they were 3 cupcakes, but he did get 3 games to start last season for the cheeseburger incident. So I think it's probably the end of the penalties. Can't say that for sure, though. That is a question that needs to be resolved.
I can add some context to the Proctor situation. That a few months ago, there's PCA meeting, which is, basically Beth Getz, is available to speak after with reporters. I asked her about that, and she basically said she didn't have an update at that time. Like they were still kind of waiting to hear from the NCAA. And so again, this was a few months ago. Haven't asked since then, but as of then, she didn't have anything to update regarding a potential penalty regarding Caden Proctor. So that's what I can provide for that.
So let's circle back as we finish here, Tyler. We want to get you guys a little bit of a pod. Obviously, more information this afternoon at hawkcentral.com after we hear from Kirk Ferentz, potentially Beth Getz, potentially get more whatever contacts from other sources, etc. But let's talk about the season now as a result of this. The opener, as you mentioned, this is a team that faced some adversity last year with the gambling stuff. Jamari Harris was out. Noah Shannon was out. Others were out. Chris Reams, I believe, was out. Obviously, Aaron Blom suspended for life. So there was a distraction last year, and they got through it fine. They won the first game. They beat Iowa State. They won the next game pretty convincingly. Then Penn State and injuries. Then it sort of unraveled a little bit. But you feel. I feel fine about the opener at this point. I think what's funny is, with Phil Parker's injury, right, which you wrote about, like Seth Wallace would be maybe have a more pronounced role with the defense typically, but now maybe it's like, okay, Phil's got to be down there now, right? Because he's almost got because Seth's the one that signals in the defense predominantly. As assistant defensive coordinator. So there will be some game day things to figure out and sort through. Hopefully we can talk to Seth on Tuesday. And then, what does that mean for week 2? That's the part I think that changes here, Tyler, because now you've got, this team loves Kirk Ferentz. This team loves Kirk Ferentz. And to have him back for the Iowa State game in week 2, that is a major emotional boost, I would think, to have him in that locker room before that game. Because that's going to feel like a long time coming. Like, we got this one for you, coach. There could be some real emotions there that Iowa could take advantage of week 2 against Iowa State, I think.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And also like Caleb Brown coming back as well. So, and Jon Budmayr. So it's not just one person, but
win one for Coach Bud.
But no, but I think it does, just because we've talked about the build up to that Iowa State game is so important, because that's going to be a really early season litmus test to where Iowa's at. And now this situation it throws a little bit of a wrench in the lead up to that, right? Is like, how is Iowa going to handle that adversity early on? Like, it just makes things a little bit more uncertain, and seeing how maybe Iowa responds to that leading up to that game. So, but I do think it's a legit, the motivation of having Kirk back. It's the fact that it's at Kinnick too, like the energy that you would expect to be in the stadium. And I'm curious to see week 1 if there's any like free Kirk signs or anything like that. So that should be interesting to see how the fan reaction. But yeah, like when they come out for that Iowa State game, you would think that energy is just going to be crazy, and because it feels like Iowa State had they were the ones with something to prove in that game, like on the week 2 game. Now it feels like Iowa can play with a little bit more of a chip on their shoulder. Not that they weren't going to full-heartedly before, but now, it, like you said, I think it's just another little kind of added aspect of the rivalry.
Dargan chimes in, Dargan Southard, who's producing our podcast, our trusty third teammate here, says Iowa's the betting line in the opener has not moved based on this news, 23.5 over Illinois State. So that's kind of the expected, margin of victory, I suppose. Tyler, it could get tense in that first game. What if things are going poorly in that first quarter and a half? I mean, you got a new offensive coordinator, you got a defensive coordinator who's, got one shoulder functioning, and then a brand new person in that head coach seat. I mean, there are some. I mean, it's different to be in that chair, in that head coaching chair. So that's the type of thing where you do kind of want to come out and make a statement, not make that game more tense than it needs to be, because you've got a lot of kind of new parts now running the show in that opener, big time.
And like the Utah State game last season wasn't a blowout by any means. Like that, I mean, it didn't feel like Utah State really ever had a true shot at winning, but it wasn't like that was just a total blowout from, the very beginning. So, and also we've talked about, like, well, if let's say Iowa starts Cade McNamara and he's struggling, how long of a leash do they give him? Like, where's that decision going to come from? Is Kirk going to be the one advising Seth Wallace before the game that, hey, if he's not playing,
take him out.
Yeah, like,
leave him in.
It's like have an earpiece in or something. Like
that would probably be another violation. Yeah, so better not do that, Kirk.
But
okay.
But that's another thing, is like the in-game kind of, when you talk about Iowa's offense and like the quarterback situation, like how is that maybe going to change, or what type of plan do they go into the game with, or is this going to be up to Tim Lester?
Read Dargan's message.
Yeah, Dargan says he's going to have to buy a message on the Jumbotron. Yeah.
Leave Cade in, Kirk Ferentz. Paid like $15,000 to put it up there.
Kirk Ferentz from Kirk Ferentz. People are asking what time the presser is. 1:30 p.m. Central
1:30. I don't think it's streamed. That's what they told me yesterday. We'll see. But again, another good reason to follow HawkCentral.com.
We'll have video.
Yeah. Tyler's all over it. He's Mr. Video now with his fancy equipment.
Got a new camera.
Yeah. Any other loose ends? I've got to get to Iowa City. Like I said, my kids are coming with me, so they're not coming to the press conference. Don't worry.
Oh, why not?
They're going to visit Grandma and Grandpa.
Bring Grandma and Grandpa too.
Yeah, that'd be hilarious.
Bring the whole family.
They'd be asking for autographs.
Yeah.
No. Any other loose ends before we wrap up?
It's just we literally were talking about a podcast we recorded it on Wednesday. You were like, "Are you ready for year 2 on the beat?" And I was like, I think so, but last season kind of went off the rails, so I don't know. And here we are, less than a day later, and then stuff is already going crazy. So let's see what the rest of the season has to bring.
I just heard back from Matt Weitzel, the SID, via email. He says still not sure if they can stream it today. They're remodeling some stuff regarding that, whatever infrastructure does the live streaming, but he says they will post it on YouTube after the presser is over. So folks will have a chance to view the full presser at some point today, at Hawkeye Sports or Iowa Hawkeyes or wherever they post that on YouTube. So, all right. Thanks, Tyler. Good to see you. And I'll see you in 3 hours and 30 minutes or so.
All right. Have safe travels.
All right, buddy. Thanks for joining us here on Hawk Central. Like I said, our columns should be up around 4:00, be my guess, something like that. I can't just write something right away on something like this. It's a little bit heavy.
Why not? You can't?
Well, I mean,
not a machine.
I could try to guess. Maybe I could use AI, my AI column. Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like that hasn't gotten a great response.
No,
steer away from
that. Was a joke. That was a joke. But yeah, 4:00-ish is about when I plan to file. I think Tyler about the same, because those are our deadlines. So 4:00 is pretty hard deadline for us. So stay tuned, hawkcentral.com. Thanks for joining us today. I'll talk to you soon.